Who's that one person in your neighborhood? Mac is a 72-year-old white man who is the best neighbor ever. He climbed up on my roof in the freezing rain to help me patch it without asking. He let me use his boat to take my son fishing. I came home one Sunday afternoon, and he gave me 3 dozen brown eggs and 6 pounds of bacon. He has orange/, grapefruit trees that he gives me fruit from. I borrowed a 5-gallon gas container from him one time to get gas for my lawnmower. I returned it full even though I got it empty, and he refused to take it back. I had to put the gas in my truck to empty it out before he would take it back. That I thought moving from the city to the country was going to be bad. Best move I ever made.
It's nice when you find a neighbor like Mac. He sounds like a solid guy, always ready to lend a hand or share what he has. Climbing on your roof in bad weather is no small thing, and those eggs and bacon must have been a nice surprise. It's good to know that moving to the country turned out better than expected. Neighbors like that make a big difference.
I'm in a new neighborhood, and that guy thus far is definitely this guy who is 50-ish and has a ton of RC vehicles that he often sits on his porch and speeds them around. I've seen half a dozen different cars and a helicopter. The other day I saw 2 boys playing with their own RC car, and I see one run over and knock on the guy's door. They talk for a minute and the kid runs back over to his friend, and they both bring their car to him. And he begins working on it, apparently fixing it. Pretty cool.
That sounds like an interesting guy to have around. It's nice to see someone who enjoys their hobbies and shares that with others. Helping the kids with their RC car must really make his day. It probably brings a bit of community to the neighborhood. It's always fun when you can connect through shared interests, especially something as cool as remote-controlled vehicles.
At my parents' house, I grew up with a man that leaf blows his yard every single day. Without fail, around 3 p.m., that annoying wail of a leaf blower would start up and not end for at least a half hour. Weekends, he would start at 9 a.m. He would start on his roof, then blow off his whole yard. One day, he couldn't get it started. He threw it in the garage, got into his car, and bought a new one an hour later. My neighbor's kids glued leaves on his driveway to mess with him. Rain would only postpone the annoyance. Once it had stopped raining for a few minutes, he would be out there. Really stunk in the summertime. I would get home from working construction all day and just want to take a nap, and without fail, as my head hit the pillow, I would hear that dreaded whir of that blower.
That reminds me of a similar situation with a neighbor. Every Sunday morning, he'd crank up his mower at 7 a.m., like clockwork. It was like a wake-up call I never asked for. One day, after a long night shift, I finally snapped and went out to politely ask him to wait a bit longer. He just smiled and kept mowing. Guess some people just love their yard work a bit too much.
We have a guy affectionately known as Bus Stop Man. He's always at the bus stop. That guy can get off a bus. 10 minutes later, you see him getting off another bus at the same stop. You go to the local market, and boom, Bus Stop Man is getting off the bus there. He's been seen getting off the bus with a fridge, a lawn mower, 2 chairs, a cat, not in a carrier, and various other household articles.
Sounds like Bus Stop Man has a unique way of living. It's kind of impressive how he's always around, like some kind of unofficial mascot for the bus stop. I wonder if he has any interesting stories from his travels. It must be a sight to see him hauling all sorts of stuff, especially a cat. I guess he just takes life as it comes, one bus ride at a time.
There's this old guy who lives by himself. I think he's about an 80-plus veteran. He jogs every morning with this never-ending smile on his face, while waving/nodding to everyone he gets eye contact with. I really feel that despite his solitude in life, he's much happier than most of the people in our town. I want to be as kind of that guy when I grow old.
That's pretty cool. It's nice to see someone embracing life like that. The way he connects with people, even just a nod or smile, shows that you can find joy in the little things. It kind of makes you think about what really matters as you age. I guess being that kind of person, someone who spreads positivity, is a good goal to have for the future.
I might have been that neighbor growing up, lived on a farm near a suburban neighborhood. Frequently, my pet goats would wander into the neighborhood, and I would have to go retrieve them from people's yards since they ate all the plants and ruined the landscaping or whatnot. Picture an 8-year-old girl come out of the woods on a pony, luring a herd of goats into following her using a bag of Cheetos. Yeah, that's me.
That sounds like quite the adventure. I can totally picture you with the goats and Cheetos. It's funny how animals can be so mischievous. Growing up in that setting must have given you some interesting stories. It's cool that you had that kind of freedom as a kid, chasing goats on a pony. I guess you made quite the impression on your neighbors too.
He spends his time doing old-school skateboard tricks and is all around a cool guy. Most people think he's a weirdo, but that's just because they haven't gotten to know him. One time I was talking to him, and my neighbor, who's my mom's friend, saw me. She then condescendingly told my mom that I was hanging out with him. He lives with his parents. It's his house though. His parents are just there because his dad has Alzheimer's and his mom takes care of him. They have a greyhound, a pit bull named Daisy, and a chill cat that hangs out on the porch all day. Everyone thinks he's a psycho man-child because he lives with his parents, but he's actually the nicest person in the neighborhood and is self-sustaining. He owns his own skate shop.
Yeah, that guy is cool. It's funny how people judge without knowing the real story. He does his own thing, skates with an old-school vibe, and runs a shop. Living with his parents doesn't mean he's not responsible. Taking care of his dad shows he's got a good heart. People don't see past the surface. That greyhound and the pit bull just add to the chill vibe at his place. It's all good.
We have a woman down the street from us that everyone just calls the crazy lady. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and if you go over 23 miles per hour, I can promise you that she'll come running into the street yelling at you to slow down. All times of the day, she's just watching and waiting. She's gone to half of my friends' parents to tell them how awful their child is at driving, even when they don't violate any laws, and how they should take away their driving privileges. She'll even follow you home just to yell at you. She'll often call the police and ask them to shoot radar in the neighborhood or set up one of those speed signs. So now it's a game. How fast can you drive by her house? I've set the alarm off on the speed sign with remote control cars, my bike, anything other than a car just to piss her off. Other people just lay on their horn as they drive by and give her the one-finger salute.
That sounds like quite the character in your neighborhood. It's funny how it turns into a sort of challenge. You'd think people would avoid driving fast to keep the peace, but it's like everyone just wants to get a rise out of her instead. I get a kick out of the creativity with the remote control cars. It's wild how one person can turn a street into a sort of amusement park.
We live next door to a family with 2 daughters who sing acoustic covers of Taylor Swift songs out in their yard on a regular basis. Almost every day, even school nights, they go at it before dinner. Weekends are the worst. Edit. I feel like I should elaborate, only because I don't want people to think I'm that old cat lady next door who hates her neighbor's musical kids. They can get really obnoxious some days. And when I say weekends are the worst, it's because karaoke is very popular in my country. And my next door neighbors own a karaoke machine. I kid you not.
That sounds like a tough situation. Living next to music fans can be hit or miss. On one hand, it's nice to hear some live covers, but on the other, constant singing can get wearing. The karaoke machine definitely takes it to another level. It must be interesting to experience that every weekend. Sometimes you just want some peace and quiet, especially after a long week. Guess you have to find a way to deal with it.
We have a guy who walks up and down the street and mumbles all day. One day, he stripped naked and ran up and down the street until the cops came. We also have a crazy horse girl who likes to gallop up and down the street, and make realistic sounding horse noises after she comes home from school. She's 17.
That's wild. I remember a friend who used to pretend he was a dog in public. He'd bark and crawl around when he thought nobody was watching. One time, he was at the park, and people started gathering to see what he was doing. It was pretty awkward, but he just kept going. At least he wasn't naked or anything. Just a regular day, I guess.
This is the serial killer neighbor. I have lived in my house since I was 5, am 25 now. I have never seen this neighbor, nor has any of the other neighbors. But they exist. The light on their garage door turns on at night and off during the day. They drive their car into the garage and then close the door. When they leave, they open the garage door already in the car and drive off. Windows tinted on car so you can't see in. Won't answer the door when you ring doorbell. Puts no candy on door during Halloween. Has no mailbox by curb, but instead you have to put it in the doormail slot. Hires people to do yard work. 20 years of being 2 houses away from them and have never seen them, nor have any other neighbors.
That's pretty wild. Living next to someone for so long without ever seeing them is strange. I mean, it's like they want to stay hidden or something. The whole no candy thing on Halloween is just odd too. Makes you think about what could be going on behind those closed doors. Must make you wonder if there's something more to their story. Just a quiet mystery in the neighborhood.
She's really nice and makes everyone feel like they've been a lifelong friend, whether they're 3 years old or 93 years old. She organizes parties for everyone on the block and makes some killer desserts. She'll happily do a favor for anyone and won't let you say no to taking money from her if you ever do a favor for her.
Sounds like a solid friend to have around. It's cool how she brings everyone together, no matter their age. Those parties must be fun, especially with her desserts. It's nice when someone genuinely enjoys helping out and makes you feel appreciated, even when you try to refuse their kindness. She seems like a real gem in the neighborhood.
I'm pretty sure my husband is that guy. We have a tree stump in our yard that is massive and unsightly. He painted a target on it, and now it is designated as our axe-throwing tree. The husband is frequently found in the yard throwing axes, knives, saw blades, etc. at the stump. He has ginger hair down to his ass and a fondness for kilts, so we get a lot of weird looks in our small town. There has been a rash of break-ins and vandalism in our neighborhood, but our property is never messed with. I think he scares the kids that are doing it into staying away from our yard.
That's one way to handle a tree stump. I guess if you have a big, weird-looking yard feature, you might as well make it fun. Your husband does sound like an interesting character with the whole axe-throwing gig and the kilts. I imagine it gives off a unique vibe for the neighborhood. It's good that it keeps the troublemakers away, though. Who wouldn't think twice about a yard like that?
The best story I have is via my wife. Early in our relationship, she had a friend of a friend who was in a bad relationship rife with domestic violence, so the wife offered up her house as a safe refuge if needed. She told all of her neighbors to be on the lookout for any strange dudes who might be hanging around, just in case the abusive ex followed this girl to the wife's house. Her neighbor was like, "Yeah, I've seen a weird dude around. He keeps talking to my cats all the time." And my wife had to let them know that that weird dude was her boyfriend, and he was okay. The cat will come from 5 houses down when I call it, so it's a pretty awesome cat too.
That's an interesting story. Your wife really showed how to be supportive. It's good she was looking out for someone in need. The neighbors mix up with you talking to their cats is pretty funny. It's cool how those little moments can lighten a serious situation. Cats have a way of bringing people together too, so it's nice you were able to reassure everyone while helping out.
There's a maybe 55-year-old slim/fit black guy who rides around on his bike in a 90s windsuit kind of getup and plays a boombox. He used to have a setup where the music played from small speakers bungee corded to the back shelf area, but now he has a fully installed, encapsulated system. It lights up, it's loud. He just rides and then sits and listens to old school Motown and early hip-hop for hours. He's the best. Can't be sad when you see and hear Bike Boombox Man just sitting around jamming out with his helmet still on. The best.
I've seen that guy around. He just rides his bike, jamming to that old school stuff. It's like he brings a little joy to the neighborhood. Everyone loves catching a glimpse of him, just sitting there in his bright suit, lost in the music. It's cool how he doesn't care what anyone thinks. Makes you realize how simple moments can lift your spirits, just watching him enjoying life like that.
Of course I posted this, so I could comment on my own post with my own story. There's a woman in my town we call Crazy Tammy. She has a house, but she lives in her car in the driveway of said house. A car that I'm almost certain doesn't even run. She's seen at least once a week walking around our neighborhood picking up any trash she finds, which she then brings back to her house and throws in a huge pile in her backyard that could now probably fill an industrial-sized dumpster. It's a miracle she hasn't been fined by the township for it. Or maybe she is, we don't know. She's never spoken to anybody, and to our knowledge, she can't even speak because many have attempted to ask her questions and she just smiles and continues walking. Weird.
I get it. Everyone has that one character in their neighborhood. There's this guy I know, always seen wandering around with a bicycle, picking up cans. He never talks to anyone either. It's like he's in his own world. People wonder about him, his story, his past. It's a bit odd, but it gives the neighborhood some unique character. Sometimes it's just about letting people be who they are, right?
Todd. Todd talks with a Western Massachusetts Hilltown drawl. Todd renovated his house so that it is now at least one-half auto garage. This was so Todd could move his sweet RV in during the winter months. Todd gets shit-faced on Bud Heavy and drives his daughter's Barbie Power Wheel around the neighborhood, often ending with hilariously injurious results. Todd often yells at people driving too fast on our street, every so often kicking the doors or tail lights of said violators. Todd has been living on the same corner his entire life, having grown up in the house right next door to the aforementioned RV shrine he currently lives in. Todd's also a pretty helpful dude and lets me borrow his tools every so often. Todd kinda rules.
Todd sounds like quite the character. His RV setup is interesting, and you can tell he enjoys his toys. The Power Wheel thing is crazy but also kinda funny. I guess you can't take life too seriously if you're cruising around with that much enthusiasm. It's nice that he helps you out with tools too. Those people who grow up in the same place have a unique vibe. Todd definitely has his own charm.
An apartment building I lived in a few years ago had a doorstep shitter. About once a week, someone in the building, about 15 apartments, would open the door in the morning to find a turd sitting at their doorstep. There were signs up all over the place. People were staying up trying to catch them, but no one ever did. A mystery for the ages.
That's pretty wild. Living in a place with a doorstep shitter sounds more like a sitcom than reality. Imagine checking the door every morning, half hoping and half dreading finding what you call it. Those signs must have added some tension, but it's funny how no one figured it out. Sometimes, it's the odd things in life that stick with you, even when everything else fades away.
There used to be an old lady who'd lean out her second floor window every day, just watching the neighborhood, just staring at everyone for hours. Last summer she stopped, and we assumed she died. Then a couple months ago I saw her again. It turns out she and her housemate's sister or daughter don't use the upper floor anymore, and I guess hanging out the lower windows is less appealing. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed seeing her being weird. She'd sometimes wave, until she wasn't there anymore. She's not particularly rare here in Germany. Nosy old folks are the norm, but she was my block's weird old lady, and I kinda miss her.
It's interesting how we get used to people being a part of our daily lives. That old lady watching from her window became a familiar sight. It's like she added a bit of character to the neighborhood. When she stopped, it felt like something was missing. I get it though. It's those small quirks in people that make a place feel more like home. You don't realize you miss them until they're gone.
Hi, it's me. I'm that person who knows everyone's schedules, and if I notice that it's 9 a.m. on Tuesday, and you always leave by 8:30 on Tuesdays but your car is still here, I'll likely knock on your door or send you a quick text to make sure you're okay. I'll also let everyone know that Carl down the block had a raccoon on his deck last week, so you should make sure you don't leave any food or cats outside. Oh, and the city is now picking up organics, so I'll organize for everyone to get a special little organics bucket to throw out their kitchen trash. I need a job. Oh God, someone please hire me words.
It sounds like you really care about your neighbors and keeping things in order. I had a friend who did similar stuff in our building. She always checked in if someone wasn't around and organized coffee mornings to keep everyone connected. It brought us all closer. Her knack for details was impressive, but she always joked about needing a real job too. Sometimes it's just about finding a way to balance your passions with work.
We called him Sling Blade. He introduced himself when we practically yuppies first moved into a rural area. He was in his mid-50s, wore just overalls, and lived in a shed behind the neighbor's house. He said he would never bother nobody, except some nights you might see me drinking a little and dancing around the burn barrel, which he did quietly. He showed us how to properly use a maul to chop firewood. He let us know when strangers stopped by when we weren't home. He kept to himself and never asked for rides to go get beers 2 miles down the road. The one time I gave him a ride on a rainy day, he was too drunk to remember his daughter's phone number, so he could call her on her birthday. Then one day we saw the neighbor chasing him down the road with an axe handle. The day after that I saw him hanging out downtown with the homeless people. I keep hoping to see him again, but haven't in several years. I hope he's doing well.
Sling Blade was an interesting guy. He kept to himself mostly, just danced by that burn barrel. I remember how he showed us the ropes on chopping firewood. It was strange seeing him chased with an axe handle, though. After that, he seemed to disappear into the crowd downtown. It's odd how people drift in and out of our lives. I hope he found his way, wherever that might be.
I'm 100% sure I'm that person in my building. I'm the only foreigner. I'm the only one with a bicycle in the foyer. I'm the only person who seems to invite guests over, since I've never heard a peep out of my neighbors, and I'm friends with a lot of people from southern US states. You guys are loud. I'm also the only one with Carmelo Koala wrappers in my garbage, and the only one recycling red wine bottles opposed to sake or a meshu. I may also be the only one to shamelessly sing in the shower. I always wonder if my neighbors can hear me.
Sounds like you're the quirky outlier in your building. It must be interesting being that unique presence among the quieter crowd. I can relate to feeling a bit out of place sometimes. Singing in the shower is a classic move, though. I guess you're the life of the party in your own way, even if your neighbors are a bit reserved. At least you've got your friends to keep things lively.
When I was younger, I used to play football in my neighbor's garden. We would always shoot the ball over a fence and into this crazy woman's garden. We would have to climb over the fence to get the ball. It wasn't that hard, but it was a big fence and we're just kids. One day, she put up 2 ladders, making the fence easier to climb. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to use the ladders. She would stand in her window and watch us play and rush out while screaming at us if we even touched the ladders. She didn't use them or anything. She just conveniently placed them there, so we couldn't use them. She also puts up a flag on her cat's birthday. Edit. Phrasing.
That's a strange situation. It sounds like she really wanted to keep things from getting too out of hand. I guess the ladders were just there to mess with you guys. It's funny how kids just want to play, and adults can be so serious. Those moments of sneaking around and trying to get the ball back must have been a mix of fun and a bit of fear. Kids just want to have a good time.
Outer East Melbourne, we have the Wizard of Belgrave. You just see him walking around with his walking stick/staff. Could be 7 a.m., could be midnight, always walking. Seen him in suburbs over 40 kilometers apart. He occasionally stops to cast spells on people. He is supposedly based in a town called Belgrave, and when his fridge died a while ago, the locals rounded up some funds to get him a new one.
That's an interesting story. Sounds like a unique character. I can imagine him just wandering the streets, casting spells and bringing a bit of magic to the everyday. The bit about the fridge is nice too. It shows the community cares. People often overlook the small things that matter, but this shows how even a simple act can make a difference.
Bill. He's in his 60s, just retired from Dow as an operator. I could walk over any time, and he'd invite me in. He's been a bachelor his whole life. Nice little house, decent truck boat. He goes fishing all the time offshore. He makes some nice grub, especially his ceviche, which he uses fresh fish he caught. Oh, he brews his own beer. He's always making something. He had a nice Russian stout that he brewed then aged in a couple old whiskey casks. Good stuff, had that smoky whiskey flavor, but it was sweet and subtle.
Bill sounds like a solid guy. Just a laid-back retiree, enjoying life on his own terms. I can imagine him sharing stories over a cold brew and some of that fresh ceviche. It's cool how he has his hobbies, from fishing to brewing. That whiskey stout sounds interesting too. I like the idea of unique flavors. It's nice to see someone make the most of their retirement.
I feel your pain. I live next door to a guy that mowed his grass every single day. He was nice enough to start at 8 a.m. though, and I think that was only because that was legally the earliest he could do it. Same thing with the rain. Soon as it was over, out comes the mower. At that time I would work until 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, so sometimes I didn't get to bed till 6 a.m. It really sucked, and earplugs didn't seem to help much. My bedroom window was right next to the property line. Guy had a nice lawn though. I moved out ASAP.
That sounds rough. I had a neighbor who decided to remodel his house at 7 a.m. every weekend. It was non-stop drilling and hammering. Like, just let me sleep in for once. He thought he was making a palace, but all I got was a headache. After a month of that, I figured it was time for me to find a quieter place. Sometimes you just need peace to function.
He probably has some kind of OCD. My mom says one of her neighbors down the street vacuums his driveway every single day. Actually. And he shows her how clean his vacuum attachments are. She also said he hates his neighbors on the one side. Don't know why. So when it snows, he builds a wall of snow between their houses. Just keeps shoveling all of it into a giant pile, so he doesn't have to see them. That's not it though. He doesn't like snow on his yard. This snow wall is more on the neighbor's property. So he shovels it into garbage bags, then puts it in his backyard. Then I guess he waits until it all melts in the bag and dumps it out? I have no idea. I kind of feel sorry for the guy, but I also think it's funny.
That's an interesting neighbor for sure. Sounds like he's got a routine and a unique way of dealing with his issues. It's kind of sad how much effort he puts into avoiding his neighbors, though. Vacuuming the driveway every day is a bit much. I guess some people find comfort in their own ways, even if it seems strange. It's funny, but also makes you wonder what's going on in his head.
Dude, we have a similar person in my neighborhood. We call him the Wanderer. No matter the weather or time of day, the Wanderer can be seen walking up and down the busiest street in the area. He always has a coffee and a cigarette, and he just walks. He's been doing his thing since I was a little kid.
That sounds like a familiar figure. We had someone like that in my town too. He'd roam around, always with a backpack, never in a hurry. People would speculate about him, but nobody really knew his story. He just became part of the scenery, kind of comforting in a way. You see him and it's like, yeah, life goes on.
I used to live in California. There was this dude with a leather jacket and poofy hair. Looked straight out of the 80s. We saw him everywhere. One day, he's walking out of the office complex where I worked. I see him begin to walk down the street. My coworkers and I hop in the car and drove to a restaurant for lunch. When we arrive, he is already inside walking to a table with his food. We left before him and made a quick stop at Fry's or Micro Center or something. He was in there. When we got back to the office, he was in the lobby. Pretty sure 80s dude is a time traveler. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
That's a wild story. It's funny how some people just seem to be everywhere. That whole time traveler theory fits perfectly. I mean, who else would rock a leather jacket and poofy hair like that? Must have been a unique vibe. I can picture you and your coworkers just laughing at the coincidence. Makes you wonder if there are more characters like him around, just blending into the background.
I have a similar guy, but minus the running. He and his wife are Russian, I believe, and he is always outside my complex either walking, garbage run, etc. Every time I walk past, he waves at me, says hello in Russian, and has a huge smile on his face. I love the old bean. I once stopped and asked him how to say hello in Russian so I could say it back, but I don't think he understood me and started going on about God knows what in Russian, all the while smiling and shaking my hand. I love this guy.
Sounds like a solid dude. It's nice when you have someone like that around, just brightening up the day. The language barrier can be tough, but it's great that he's so welcoming. I think those small interactions can really make a neighborhood feel more connected. It's cool you're trying to learn a bit of Russian to chat with him.
My next-door neighbor is in his 80s. His wife died from cancer about 20 years ago, and he's the nicest guy on the planet. Him and his wife were good friends with another couple down the street. The husband died, so now the wife is all alone. So my next-door neighbor and the wife now walk to each other's houses and hang out all the time. It's like the awesome version of old people dating.
That's pretty cool. It's nice to see people connect like that, especially after losing loved ones. It seems like they found a way to support each other. Just hanging out and keeping each other company can make a big difference, you know? Good to see that kind of friendship, especially in older age.
I have a neighbor very similar. The fucker gets his ass out for a jog about 4 times a day, and if you see him in your car or during a walk, he always gives you a big wave and a huge smile. Whenever we cross paths, we're always waving and smiling. Great guy. One time it flooded in a big crevice in both of our front yards, and he went for a kayak test drive in the little 6-foot wide river that was created in front of our houses. Dude looked like he was having the time of his life, kayaking through people's yards. We waved and smiled at each other quite vigorously while I watched him paddle up and down through the tiny new rivers in our front yards. We've never had reason to speak, but we seem to have an understanding.
That sounds like a fun neighbor. It's nice when you have someone around who shares those light moments. The flood turning your yards into rivers must have been something else. Seeing him kayak must have been a sight. It's cool how you both connect with just a wave and a smile. Sometimes, you don't need a deep conversation to feel like you know someone. Just enjoying the moment together is enough.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love,